Hi guys, and welcome. In this video we'll explore the gradient intercept form of a straight line and have a look at what it looks like in its equation form and what it actually represents with the numbers in terms of the gradient and the intercepts. So we know that a linear function is a straight line, and linear functions or straight lines have particular equations. These are just examples of straight lines and their equations. So these all have something in common. What they do have in common is they all have x's and y's, and the x's and y's have a power of 1. So these are called linear functions, and these equations give us straight line graphs. So there's a few different ways we can represent a straight line, and one of them is in this form, where it says y equals mx plus b. And we know that m is the gradient, and this thing on the end, this plus b, is actually the y-intercept, where the straight line crosses the y-axis. So a straight line doesn't have to be in this form, but this is one way we can look at a straight line and have a look at what the graph would look like. So this is a nice way to represent a linear function. Okay, so looking at y equals mx plus b, for each of these lines, we need to write down the gradient and the y-intercept for each linear function. So the first one says y equals 2x plus 3. So this m, or the coefficient of x, a coefficient is a number in front of a variable, and the coefficient of x here is the gradient. The coefficient over here is 2. So we can say that m is equal to 2, and the constant term on the end, the positive b, is positive 3. So we can say that b equals 3. So looking at our equation, y equals 2x plus 3, we can say that the gradient is 2 and the y-intercept is 3. With the next one, we got y equals 1x take away 7. So if you don't have a coefficient, there is a 1 in front of that x. So our m value is 1 and our b value is negative 7. Okay, part C, we got y equals 1/3 x plus 2. What do you think our gradient will be? Knowing that the gradient has a coefficient of x, and this is our coefficient, this 1/3. Okay, so our gradient is 1/3, and our y-intercept is 2. Just make a note that 1/3 x plus 2 is also the same as x over 3 plus 2. So this 1/3 x and this x over 3, they are the same thing, just represented in a different way. And part D is in a different format to what we normally see, y equals mx plus b. So what we end up having, you could rearrange it, so rather than having the number at the start, we want the mx at the start. So we can write it as mx plus b. So having it in this form helps us realize what the gradient and y-intercept is straight away. Our our gradient is negative 2, and our y-intercept is positive 5 in that case. So each of these straight lines, they all have different equations. We can write down what the gradient or what the slope or what the steepness is, and we can find out where it crosses the y-axis just by looking at the numbers. Now going in the reverse form, we have information, we have the gradient and the y-intercept. Your job is to find out what its equations are. So pause the video and see if you can write the equations of each of these straight lines with the information given to you. Okay, the first one is m equals 6 and b equals 4. Remember, it needs to be in the form y equals mx plus b. So there's your m, so that will go here. And here's our b, and that should go on the end. So our equation will be y equals 6x plus 4. Okay, the next one is, instead of writing m equals, I've got gradient equals. They mean the same thing. So gradient and m, they're the same thing. So y equals mx plus b. So that's our information put in our y equals mx plus b formula. Part C, y equals 3/4 x, take away 7. You could have 3x over 4, just another way you can write it. But we've got 3/4 x, take away 7. And the last one is y equals 1x, take away 1. You don't have to have the 1 as the coefficient. You could leave it off, but you could put it in if you wanted to. Okay, so rather than having the gradient and the y-intercept given to us, we'll work these out through these straight lines and then find out what the equations will be. So the first one, we have to find out what the gradient is. And I've just put 2 particular points on here. So the first point could be that point and that point. It doesn't matter where you choose your 2 points, because it's going to give you the same answer if you chose, just say, this point and that original point. Okay, so gradient is rise over run. Before you start substituting, you need to figure out if it's going up or going down. Is it increasing or decreasing? And because the first one is going up, that's a positive gradient, while the second one is going down, that's a negative gradient. Because this one is going up, that's a positive gradient, we just have a positive answer for our gradient. So substituting, we have rise over run. Here's our rise, here's our run, 4/2. We know the m is going to give us 2. Our b value is, where does the line cross the y-axis or the vertical axis? Here is our vertical axis. So our value is at +3. So b equals +3. Knowing y equals mx plus b, we just worked out those 2 values, and they can be substituted into y equals mx plus b. So here is the equation of the straight line. So that straight line has a relationship, and the relationship is given by this equation. Okay, with the second one, we'll do the same thing. Find out what the gradient is, but in this case, it's negative rise over run, because it's going down, it's decreasing. So it's negative 4/2, and that is -2. The y-intercept is at -1. It crosses the vertical axis at -1. So substituting into our y equals mx plus b, we have y equals -2x, take away 1. So y equals -2x, take away 1 is the formula or the equation for that particular straight line. So we've looked at finding the equation through the gradient and y-intercept given to you. Now we've had a look at looking at a straight line and finding out what the equation is. Okay, so just through this video, you can see that as you change the gradient, the steepness changes as well. And if you move the y-intercept, and you'll notice that this value changes, that's the y-intercept, and you notice where it crosses the vertical axis. So there's a few things to make note of. The coefficient of x, which is the gradient, the constant term, which is the part where it crosses the y-axis, that's the coefficient, that's the gradient. So that tells you the steepness. So as I click on the slope, I find out that the gradient, the rise over run, gives me the same answer as the coefficient of x. And the y-intercept is where it crosses the vertical axis. And that's a constant term when it's in this form. So the constant term is exactly where it crosses the y-axis. Okay, thanks for watching this video. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Thank you.